Hello, Gen Genies. It's me, Julie.
And Rich.
Before we get started today, we want to let you in on some exciting news. We have launched our new Patreon page for the podcast.
Woohoo! We are super excited about this new chapter for CutOff Jeans.
So, Patreon is a website where listeners like you can pledge a small monthly amount. We're talking only $5 or $10, guys, to support the podcast and help defray the cost of bringing you the show each week.
To be clear, CutOff Jeans will continue to be absolutely free. But to thank you for your support, we are going to offer our patrons some fun little extras.
Like early access to the podcast every week, where you'll get to hear the latest episode before it's released to the general public.
And why not make your friends jealous with exclusive patron-only CutOff Jeans swag?
Fancy. And here's something you guys have been asking for, and I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to host a monthly hour-long online Ask Me Anything session where patrons at the $10 level can literally ask me anything.
Anything? You're a brave woman, Julie.
You know, I know. I'm also going to give access to my blog, Are You My Father?, where I tell the story of my search, actually it's my life story basically, for my biological father in even more detail than I did on the podcast.
Wow, your blog was the original inspiration for CutOff Jeans, wasn't it?
It was.
Wow. Well, all patrons at any level will receive a shout out on the podcast along with our undying gratitude for your support.
Yep. You guys know that this show is a labor of love for me. It's something I'm very passionate about. It'd mean so much to me if you would consider supporting our work here on the podcast by going to patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast.
That's Patreon, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast.
We'll add a link to it on the podcast and on the Facebook page. Thank you all, my Gen Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Woo!
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip, hip, hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Jeans.
Welcome to CutOff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I am a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the co-host and the producer of this podcast. Julie.
Yes.
I want to say happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. Can you believe it?
This is episode 100.
I mean, what an accomplishment.
I know.
Right?
When you think about it, that's like 2 years if we've done one a week, pretty much. You know, I know there were a couple of weeks off at Christmas or whatever, but that's almost 2 years.
Yeah,
without
I'm
a break.
impressed with us. Yeah, really. Very little breaks. It's amazing.
But I want to take this opportunity to thank our listeners and our patrons for, over this 2-year journey, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's great.
It
I
is.
think, do we have anything special planned for today as I lead the witness?
We do have something special planned today.
For the episode 100.
For episode 100, people have been asking all along, what are you going to do? And all of a sudden there's all this pressure. And then I realized that nobody has heard from my brother Rob yet.
This is true. Because he was supposed to come out to visit from Australia.
Indeed.
And then the COVID-19 thing happened.
Though he did send me, did you see my Facebook post? He sent me a huge box of my favorite Australian candy.
Oh, that's sweet.
Huge.
Oh, that's nice.
It's dangerous to have it around. But,
so, folks, what we're going to do today is we're going to have Julie's brother, Rob, on the podcast, and I am going to interview both of them together. That's our special interview segment. It'll be the whole episode. And when we come back from this break, we will be joined by Julie and her brother.
Right. We will. Oh, I wanted to say one more thing. The reason I wanted Rich to conduct the interview because I don't want to influence Rob and I don't want to be leading the witness. So I'm going to try to stay out of all of we'll see how that works.
We'll see how that works. I've never known you to stay out of any conversation.
I know. It's kind of a lofty goal, isn't it? Anyway.
All right. We'll be right back. If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast. Now back to Julie and me. All right, we're back, and I have Julie and her brother, Rob, on the line. How are you doing, Rob?
I'm great, Richard. How are you, mate?
I'm doing great. Welcome to
See, he's
CutOff
Australian. I
Jeans.
told you.
I love his accent. I need Julie here to translate.
Really? Well, I bet she's a great translator, but surely you won't need it. I do speak English, although it is a little Australianised.
Yeah, but between yours and my New England accent, Rob, I don't know. This could really be a
Nobody
cluster.
pronounces their R's.
Right. So
That's
Rob,
a little New England joke.
Yeah,
All right.
Julie, remember when you said you were going to stay out of this one?
I know, sorry.
So I would like to know, first of all, how long ago did you and Julie connect for the first time?
Okay, it was late May in 2017, and how it happened, I got I think a friend request on Facebook and a message, via the messages you get when you're not actually connected to someone. So I think it read something like, "Oh, hi Rob, I believe I'm your cousin. We'd like to connect in some way." And at that time, I'm associated with a lot of people with intellectual disabilities, and through that association on Facebook, I get a lot of really random and also some malicious sort of requests, looking for spam, looking to hack and all that sort of thing. So I'm always very wary to requests that I'm not familiar with. So I actually sort of dismissed that first initial request to contact. I thought, okay, if it's serious, it'll probably happen again. And the very next day I was at work, and I'm the administrator of our work Facebook page. And so I got another request from Julie saying I'm reaching out for Rob Fisher. I thought, okay, well, this must be serious because she's reaching out on two formats there. And so I ended up saying, "Oh, yeah, hi Julie, how are you going? How can this be so that you're my cousin?" And then it sort of snowballed from there, really, just allowing me to process everything that was coming down the line that, potentially we could be cousins, and that sort of manifested into potentially half siblings. So it was a bit of a journey, really, and an emotional roller coaster, really, because from out of nowhere, I've potentially got another relative that then could be potentially a half sibling. So, which we knew absolutely nothing about at that particular time.
Julie, did you know at the time that Rob was your brother when you reached out to him, or did you think he might be a cousin?
I had a very strong suspicion that he was my brother.
Okay, but you didn't want to lead with that.
No, you never lead with that.
It's a little close, right?
Even if I think, I wasn't 100% sure, but I would say I was 75% sure. Well, I was 100% sure it was either, it was either Clive or Max, our uncle. And I just had a real feeling it was Clive.
So tell us more. Tell me more about what happened when you finally realized that you were actual siblings and not just cousins.
Well, after a few weeks of, I suppose, connecting and getting to know a little bit more about one another, Julie suggested, well, there's only one way to find out. How about I send you a DNA kit? I said, yeah, look, why not? I mean, at the very least, it would help Julie get some closure or at least some more information of where to, I suppose, refine her search to another area. So the kit came in the mail, and I completed it, sent it back, and then I think a few months later, we're sort of waiting. And during that time, we're just, I suppose, still getting to know each other a little bit via the Facebook chat forum. And then Julie got the results. And
can I ask you, before you tell me about the results, what was going through your mind while you were waiting for these results? In other words, because if it meant that you were actually brother and sister before you confirmed it, like what was going through your head?
Well, a myriad of emotions, really. I'm not sure if you had a lot of conversations with, I suppose, the families that do receive news of a sibling or another relative that they don't know anything about. It's such a surreal moment initially, but then you think about the possibilities, what may have been, why now. Our dad passed away in 2009, and I felt a lot of sadness, I suppose, because he wasn't alive to experience what I was able to have, I suppose. I was always willing to help Julie discover the truth, and whatever the truth was, that was going to be it, and I was going to accept it for what it was. So I was sort of also elicited the help of some of my immediate cousins who may have known Max, and I think Julie connected with them as well. So I think Julie, through this period of waiting, was obviously gleaning a lot of information from my extended family as well, just trying to, I suppose, put all the jigsaw puzzle pieces together.
Yes.
But yeah, so leading up to it, yeah, well, obviously, I felt I was very comfortable talking to Julie, and I felt that and she was a good person, and so it wasn't a hard decision for me to help and then to try to discover the truth for Julie.
Wow. Okay, so let's flash forward then to the when you get the results. Now, Julie got them, right?
Yeah, so she registered the DNA kit for me in the States.
Yes.
I think it was easier for her to do so. So she sent the registered kit to me, and then I sent it back. So I was waiting for Julie to hear the results and then inform me.
Julie, do you remember when you reached out to Robin with the information once you got the results?
I do. Rob was at work that day.
Yes.
And we had kind of an unfortunate situation at first. Do you want to talk about that, Rob?
The centimorgans weren't quite definitive. Yes. So I'm a novice when it comes to DNA and all that sort of stuff. So Julie was guiding me with the results, and as hard as she could try, I was still going, yep, what does that mean? Obviously, it was a high match for first cousins, and I suppose also a high match for half siblings. So
let me explain that a little bit. So the match came in at about on Ancestry at 1335, which is a low half sibling or a very high first cousin. And because of that, I mean, I've talked about this before, there's such a thing as an outlier, to where sometimes you have an abnormally large amount of shared DNA, just randomly, and sometimes, I mean, not very much, but it's an absolute possibility. And since, this was so important, we really needed a definitive answer.
Right.
So I was at work at the time, and we were going through a huge, I suppose, a big change at work. An NDIS program came in for disability, so it was the biggest social reform in Australia's history since Medicare was, I suppose, developed in the 80s. So we were trying to restructure the office. I was part of the marketing team, so I was doing a lot of interviews and a lot of marketing for that. So time wasn't readily available. And then Julie hit me with this in the middle of that, and I sort of had to stop and obviously wham bam through in the middle of the eyes, and okay, that's information, and Julie believes it's this. What does that mean? I won't say what I was thinking because it's swearing. So I had to I had to step away from the desk and walk down the corridor, and I remember my inline manager. She saw me and goes, "What's wrong?" So nothing. There's something wrong. What's wrong? I think the colour drained from your face to a degree, and I was trying to process everything. And I think because at that particular stage, Julie wasn't 100% sure. I think this is what I believe is the case. What do you think? And I was still reeling from the information, and I suppose at work I didn't really get a chance to really sit down and process it completely. So I had to wait, a whole working day, then go home and then think about it, talk to my wife. And
had you spoken to your wife about this earlier? Like, in other words, did she know this was in the process of that you might have a sibling?
Absolutely. Look, I let my wife know pretty much straight away once Julie connected with me and the kids.
Yes.
Once we all sort of started down that DNA path.
Were they all supportive of you, and as far as you being so open with Julie and sharing the DNA and all of that information?
Yeah. I think about my family. I think what we do well is support each other, and I suppose once told Julie's story, Benita read the blog. Obviously, that's pretty descriptive and tells the whole journey of discovery. So,
that was one of the first things that I did when I was talking to Rob. I was like, tried to put it in a nutshell. And I said, honestly, go read the blog. You'll get everything of how we got here. So I'm really glad I wrote the blog.
That's kind of unique too, right? Because not everybody that reaches out to a relative or a possible relative has a blog that they can go back and check on,
Yeah.
And I suppose that was one thing that really hit home to me, is how I I suppose, persistent and determined Julie had been over a couple of decades of searching, that when she was obviously seeking my assistance, I felt compelled to help, regardless of the result. And, so it was a no-brainer for me to say, oh, the least I could do was spit in a tube, what's it going to do to me, But then when the realisation came that, okay, we are half siblings, it certainly changed, I suppose, our family nucleus and gaining a sibling. It's not something you generally do when you're 40-odd years of age, but I reckon it's been great. I said that I think the hardest thing for me was the fact that Dad wasn't around to enjoy it as well. That's probably that's just been the hardest thing, I suppose. He would have just loved nothing more than to have no little daughter to dote on.
When you so you were an only child as far as you knew growing up? No.
Only child. No. I've got another sister who I think is a year and a bit younger than
She's 11 months younger than me.
Okay, so not even a year. So, yeah, okay. very close. I've got an older brother who's another year younger, and I've got a twin brother. My two brothers have intellectual disability, so their comprehension of things aren't great. My older brother is severely disabled, so he lives with 24-hour support in a residential home. And my twin brother, he lives independently in Dad's old home, actually, with supports, daily supports from workers and myself. So their comprehension weren't great. So I didn't really tell them much early on until the discovery was that Julie was our half sister. I told Rodney, my twin brother, but his comprehension was, oh, okay, that's great.
Yes, right. Right.
Yeah.
I want to just point out, I love that you said that you're sorry your dad wasn't around to enjoy this. Because do you believe that had he found out that this would have been a news that was happy for him?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's great.
Dad was very, I suppose, family orientated. Look, it's amazing, man. Like he lived a very hard life, upbringing and whatnot, and family was pretty important. My sister and Dad had a pretty estranged relationship. I think when my sister was middle teens, she decided to move away. And as an adult, she had a couple of kids, and then she decided to disappear. So she was missing for about 15 years, changed her name. And Dad spent a good part of a decade searching for her just to reconnect, to find out where she and his grandkids were. So he never stopped trying. And then, unfortunately, we reconnected a year after Dad passed away.
Oh, I see. Well, so this just tells me maybe this is where Julie gets her tenacity of searching for people, maybe from your dad.
Potentially. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a feeling I get a lot from him, actually. I think that and the ability for colorful storytelling, possibly.
I personally, I feel like your relationship with your parents doesn't end when they die, because they're still part of your lives. They're still part of our life every day. You think about I think about my mom, I think about my dad, both of them are gone. So what I'd like to know is, how did finding out about Julie affect the way you feel about your dad and your relationship with your dad, in your life now?
Well, I suppose it didn't really affect my memories of Dad or our relationship that we would have had, because it sort of happened before, I suppose, our family was formed.
Right. So
it was outside of that. And Dad knew nothing of the birth of Julie. It's just so hard to sort of think, I suppose, what it would have been like,
right.
If things were different, I suppose. I know Dad, he would have certainly embraced Julie in the manner that he always does with I suppose, opportunities. I just think, every time I think about the fact that he hasn't been part of this, Julie is, pretty sad.
Now, is your mom still with us?
My mum lives in Queensland, just north of Brisbane, with my sister. We have a not so good relationship. My sister, I don't get along with my sister at all. She's pretty selfish, and a lot of her decisions in life has sort of divided the family from when she was a middle teen as well. So it's pretty hard. I don't think I've met a person that's completely opposite to me as much as what my sister is, and it's funny how we both grew up in the same home, and yet we are completely polar opposites in terms of personality.
Isn't that interesting?
It seems like you and Julie have a good relationship, and I know you didn't grow up together. What do you think of that? The fact that you seem to have this good relationship with the sister you didn't know until you were, like you said, 40 some odd years old.
Yeah, it's funny because, I mean, Julie is one level-headed and measured. And
I don't think anybody's ever described to me that way, but that's nice.
Yeah, well, in the conversations we've definitely had. But
sure.
She's actually a swirling maelstrom of feminine superiority. No, supremacy.
Supremacy!
Right, okay. Obviously, I follow you on Facebook, so you do put yourself out there.
Yeah,
and
a little bit.
You like to have an opinion, which is great, and share that opinion. But no, look, I think in the conversation we've had, it's always been, mutually friendly, and there's no reason why I shouldn't be. And I suppose, in a sense, what I was lacking, I suppose, in my relationship with my other sisters, in one way, shape or form, being, I suppose, filled in the gap with Julie.
Isn't that nice?
Joining my life. Yeah.
Now, I don't want to pry, but is your relationship such that you were able to let your sister know, the sister you grew up with, about Julie, and also your mother? I know that that's not Julie's mother, but
they came down for a visit to Bendigo, and I always wanted to tell them face to face, and I knew they were coming down, so I thought, well, I'll wait till they come down and I'll have a chat. Showed some photos on my phone of Julie through Facebook, and some photos that I had. But I was just the whole time very dismissive of the whole thing. Oh, yeah, what does she want? I mean, what does she want? She wanted to reconnect with our family. Why? What's she after? So look, don't stress. She's a nice lady. She just wanted to find out who her father was. And the whole time they just kept saying things like, what does she want? Even after I told them exactly what Julie wanted. One thing about my mum is I could tell her, I suppose, a series of things, and then after I finish telling her, she'll ask me the questions, which I just answered. So it was really hard to have a conversation with Mum about some serious stuff, and that was another situation like that. And my sister was just, really, I suppose not baiting, but she was really defensive. And with her, it's always about what people want, what they want to get out of it. Even when I explained she wanted to connect with her family and find out who her biological father was, that wasn't a good enough answer for her. So I couldn't take it much further than that.
Is that still how it is? And I mean, obviously now you've known Julie for several years, and she's never wanted anything,
absolutely,
or asked for anything.
Candy, I wanted candy.
Oh, she did want candy, and
and somehow she coerced that out of us. She got what she wanted.
I got my candy.
Now your other sister is going to say, see, she wanted
Where's
something.
My candy?
Where's my candy? Absolutely.
Rob, didn't she say something when you were showing her pictures? Didn't she say that she couldn't see me because she wasn't wearing her glasses?
Actually, there was a bit of that. Very dismissive. And they're always like very half-glass empty kind of mentality. And I'll bet you she's had a good life. I said, well, she probably has, but she worked for it. Don't shoot the messenger here. This is just what it is. Can we just all, relax and understand this is what has happened, and it happened before, you and Dad met. So it's nothing untoward, but this is just what's happened. We've got to deal with it. And what do you think? And both pretty dismissive and didn't really want much to do with the connection at all. And both my sister and my mum aren't computer literate, so they don't have, social media and all that sort of stuff as well. I don't even have my sister's phone number anymore.
Julie, it sounds like you were fortunate that you reached out to Rob before you reached out to your sister.
Well, I would never have found my sister, first of all, because I find people
change your name.
Yeah, yes, and she changed her name. I would have liked to have spoken to her. I think I do get the sense that she and I are very different people, and I've chosen different paths as well. Something that's really interesting about that is that Rob and his sister are estranged, and my adoptive brother and I are also estranged, and we've always been estranged. We've never gotten along. He's always disliked me.
Yep, I hear you.
And so this is kind of like Rob just kind of came along at the exact right time, just to the first Christmas after we met, I got a Christmas card saying, Christmas greetings to my sister. And I burst into tears.
No, sorry, mate. Sorry.
Yeah, it was very sad.
It's very sweet. But,
I've always just wanted to be acknowledged as a sister and as a part of somebody's family. And somebody and this is what's so crazy is Rob is, and I've said this before, he's probably the most selfless person I've ever met. And far more than myself. I will be the first one to admit that. But I'm in awe of Rob's ability to nurture everyone around him. And so I really feel like I lucked out here.
I think you did. It sounds like you did.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, now you two were planning to meet in person in this last month. And obviously that all fell apart because of world events. So, but as far as the times that you've been able to talk on the phone or FaceTime or whatever you do you see resemblances as far as to your family or to you or to your dad when you in Julie? And I don't just mean physically, but just maybe mannerisms or personality. Is there anything there where you go, oh, of course?
Well, the eyes definitely, the Fisher eyes there. But I suppose we haven't really chatted over FaceTime at all.
Yeah, we haven't really talked face to face.
Okay.
This is really the first time.
Really? It's weird because I can see the two of you here, and it's.
Do you think we look alike?
I do see a resemblance.
Do you?
Yeah, and like what Rob just said, in your eyes. It's not just because you're both wearing glasses right now. Yeah.
It's weird. We both have these rims around our eyes. One of the first things that I did, as I always do, was I put pictures side by side and then try to find the same angles, and then I make. And there's a couple of Rob and I around the same age, and one of Clive and I around the same age that are like the exact same angles. And it's, I don't know if other people can see it, but for me, it's so gratifying.
Oh, that's neat.
Just because the shape of the jawline, I think, and the eyes, and and the widow's peak. They both Clive and Rob have a widow's peak, a little widow's peak, not a big one, and I have a little widow's peak too. Yeah. And also a little cleft in the chin that I have like a hint of a cleft. Theirs was more. So it was like mine wanted to be there.
I don't know, Rob, if you've listened to the podcast recently, but I know there were times I've mentioned the fact that when I was waiting to have my DNA results come in, I thought, I wondered if my dad might have had other kids, that I didn't know about. And so I remember going through that feeling of like, wow, I wonder, because my dad was kind of a player, or as we said in Boston, a playa back in the day. And I mean, that hasn't come true yet. I mean, nobody's tested that has come that close. So I still had to entertain the possibility.
There's still time.
I know, but it's so interesting though to meet someone who has had this happen.
I have a question that I've always wanted to ask you. Did you ever get the sense that Clive was kind of a ladies' man before he got married?
I know he enjoyed the dance scene, I suppose, prior to meeting Mum. We did discuss that. Between, I suppose, his Navy days and settling down with Mum and then becoming a postal clerk, he certainly did frequent the dances of the time in the 60s.
There was the letters that he wrote to Papa. Is that what everybody calls our grandfather?
Yeah, Papa.
I love that. He always talked about going to, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a dance hall that was very well known. And of course I've Googled it and taken pictures of it at various different angles, but he used to go there, and dance. And he also dated a lot of nurses. This is all from the records of the letters that he wrote, which is funny because my mother was a nurse.
Right. Rob, what do you think about the fact that Julie's birth mother doesn't seem to remember ever even knowing your father, let alone, conceiving a child with him?
Yeah, it's certainly intriguing. Would love to know the reasons behind that, because it's certainly, once Julie, I suppose, provided the evidence that it was my dad, to still say, no, that's not true. It's baffling. I don't know why. I don't know why. It's certainly baffling to why she would do that.
I don't expect that you would have an answer. I just wondered what your take on it was, because it's just it blows my mind, actually.
Yeah, look, it's certainly disappointing. And I feel for Julie too, because she presented with some evidence to prove that Clive was her father. So to say, no, that's not true, it didn't happen.
I don't
doesn't make sense.
I don't think she says it's not true anymore. We actually don't talk about it anymore. But she still insists that she does not remember, and that she doesn't remember there ever being anybody else. Which just, and I guess that's a possibility, because sometimes we put things out of our minds that we don't want to remember. It's very frustrating, especially once I got the letters too. I thought that I was gonna read the whole thing.
Yes.
I was so excited, and then all of a sudden it just stopped, and the next one was, he was on his way to England.
Yeah.
It sucks.
It's interesting to think, though, that your father, he never knew that Julie existed. And that, when you think about all the road not taken, right? Or, had he known about Julie early on, you might not even be here.
Right.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Oh, very true. When my sister was conceived with my mum, pretty much they got married almost straight away. So I believe something similar may have been presented, I suppose, if that was the case, if Dad knew about Julie's conception. So who knows? Absolutely.
That's one of the reasons why I get the sense that he wasn't, he wasn't running from anything.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. I mean,
if your birth mother doesn't even remember him, how could she couldn't have told him about it?
Clearly not.
I mean, it's not even a case of, she told him and she doesn't remember. So it's fascinating. But
I know. And what's interesting is that she, before it was even a question who my father was, she would always make a point of telling me that she never drank and she never partied. She didn't get, and I remember wondering why it was important for her to let me know that. Mm-hmm. And so, all the more it's like, well, that would be a good excuse. I mean, like I said, we all have a past. Things happen. Yep, right. But I kind of feel like she almost painted herself into a corner with that.
Now, Rob, I'm sure that Julie had a lot of questions about your dad when you guys met. And what was it like trying to create from memory your dad to somebody who never knew him?
Well, in some aspects it was relatively easy in terms of, I suppose, how I perceived him as a character, or his character of a man, as a father from my perspective, which differs from a father from my sister's perspective. So it's all relative from each person's point of view. So I was able to, I suppose, explain to Julie how I saw him as a man. his character. But there was so much that I didn't sort of know, like timelines and trying to find out things and trying to glean some information from my older cousins who may know a little bit more about things than I did. And it's funny because we didn't really talk much as father and son, I suppose, about a lot of his life during that period. We spoke a little bit about his Navy days and I suppose his time once he moved to Bendigo. But by that time,
he was already married. Yeah,
he was already married with two kids. So it was all sort of a revelation, I suppose. This that trying to obviously put the pieces together about his time enduring. In between, the Navy and the postal clerk days. It sounded like he did enjoy himself and have a lot of fun around the Moonee Ponds dance circuit, I think.
and Rich, Moonee Ponds is like 2 suburbs away from where I grew up.
Oh, wow.
It's very close to where I grew up. Even it's closer to where my mother was. I mean, it was like I used to go past the address of a boarding house that he lived on. I used to go past it on a daily basis.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Paths may have crossed at some point, or, I don't know. You just never, you never know, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. I wanted to say that as far as putting together a picture of who my father was, what's so great is that even before I knew that Rob was my brother, he posts a lot of pictures on Facebook, and he had this one album, like a family album, that had a series of pictures of Clive, and he writes little notations on them about Clive. And there was this one thing that I found fascinating. He said that he loved trees. Well, he loved the outdoors and he loved trees, and I love trees too, family trees. And he would always pose in front of a tree, or if he was taking a picture of somebody, he would put them in front of the tree. And so now every time I see a picture, I'm like, well, there's the tree,
Yeah. Oh, that's neat.
But I love that.
Yeah, whether it was subconscious or not, or by his own design, it was amazing how many times we'll get a photo. But how about we stand, to your right a little bit, and then there happened to be a tree in that vista. It's a funny.
He was really good at composing, I think, a visual.
I think it's actually kind of a unique gift from my perspective to be able to recreate somebody from memory for someone else. And especially that she found someone who, loved the man, to rather than, like you said, perhaps someone else in your family that didn't have the same feelings that might have given her a different picture.
I suppose
it's kind of a very nice gift, in my opinion.
From my point of view, I think Dad was always there for me, I suppose, which made it easy for me to reflect on, I suppose, the part of him that's kind, helpful, loving, and caring. He certainly was there for me when I had my kids, and we needed support, I suppose, from a grandparent's point of view. And he would drop everything at a moment's notice to come and support. Look, during the early days, my wife was struggling with postnatal depression, so we needed a little bit of extra support during those first few years as parents, and he certainly helped. During that time, I'll never forget that, because it certainly saw us through a very difficult time. But even before that, look, he was always there for me. I played sport through primary school right through. I still play sport today, but he would always be there taking me everywhere. He was always invested in, I suppose, what I was doing at the time. And I still regret to this day, he would always ask me to go bushwalking with him on weekends, but it used to always clash with me playing sport of some description. So I was very lucky that 2 years before he passed away, we took a journey down to Tasmania, which is our southernmost state in Australia, and we walked part of the Overland Track, which is one of the most beautiful walks in Australia. It's almost wilderness, but they've certainly supposed to help preserve the wilderness by building duckboards and that. So it's not as rugged and rigorous as it used to be. But that was his 4th time down there. He loved it so much. He said, right, I want to do another walk. You've got to come with me. I eventually said yes, and it was seriously the best decision I'd made as a son because we had such a great time together. As I said, he was 68 years of age when he walked this arduous track. It took us like 5 days to walk the track. And everyone we passed along the way certainly showed their admiration to someone like Dad for giving it a go at his age, but Dad just stormed along, just marched away and loved every minute of it. I think not only was he enjoying being in his element, but to have me with him, I suppose, on that journey certainly meant a little bit more to him, and it certainly did to me. So I was very lucky that I decided to say yes.
Yeah. Rob, did he and you ever climb Uluru?
No. Both of us haven't.
I did. I got you beat.
Oh, okay. Well then,
Yay!
We can't do it.
Yeah, you can't do it anymore.
No. Sibling rivalry, even now.
Yeah. So I've never been to Central Australia, but Dad actually spent a good couple of weeks there learning off the Indigenous population there.
Really?
And, he studied a few different tribes of Aborigines. I think the other Pichinchara tribe, where he went there and learned a few things. And what he learned pretty early on was it was against their culture to climb Uluru. So
yes.
So
it was 1972 when I did it.
Yeah, I know. Absolutely different time.
Before we end this, I just want to give each of you an opportunity. Is there anything that you want to ask each other? Julie, you go first.
Rob, did Clive ever struggle with any kind of mental illness like depression, anxiety, anything like that?
I would say yes. Dad certainly struggled with like social anxiety. Wasn't great in crowds. And I'm the same actually.
Me too.
Yeah. So there's a bit of history, I suppose, mental health in the family.
Yeah.
I know, his brother took his own life in the 60s. He struggled with mental health. There's
quite a bit of suicide in the Fisher line, actually.
Yeah.
Is that also the goat stealers, Julie, or is that from another?
No, that's Malcolm. That's Malcolm, not my dad.
See how I mix all these things together?
Yeah. Well, listening to, it's a long time ago now, one of the earlier podcasts, which I think it's called Intense, and that was a story of the not quite colourful, very colourful past, I suppose, of our Fisher lineage.
The one about the goldfields in the murder-suicide? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's called Intense. The play on words, Intense, and that stuck with me.
Yeah, yes.
The pun.
Yes, that was that was on the Fisher side, and that was our second great aunt.
Yeah.
And something like that.
Rob, did you have any question for Julie or anything that you wanted to share?
Well, one thing I'd like to have happen, and I know it could be very awkward, is
oh God.
Yeah, but just to have an opportunity to maybe talk to my sister and my mum to get their perspective firsthand. Like I can, I suppose, relay what they felt and said to me, but I don't know, maybe reaching out personally might get a different response. I don't know.
You think?
I don't know, to be honest, but I would be interested to see it happen, just to see what they'd say.
You know, I did speak a little bit to one of the daughters on Facebook. Do you know which one it was?
Melissa.
Oh, okay.
Melissa was the one that drove the catching up with us all those years ago to say, right, I want to find out more about my family.
Okay.
And Melissa connected to me initially to find out more about her family. Because her mum had pretty much robbed her of that opportunity.
Yeah. Wow. Well, whichever one it was, I think we were. I set up a Fisher family Facebook page, and I just started asking questions if anybody knew certain things, and she messaged me, and she didn't know who I was. She hadn't been told, and she said, "Well, what exactly do you want to know? Who are you?" And I was like, "Well, this is who I am," and she was. It kind of blew her mind. And so I just kind of, in order to ease her mind, I was like, I don't want anything. I'm not trying to break up any family. I'm not trying to, you know. And then she took that as me saying, I don't want anything to do with you.
So really?
So then she got defensive and pissed off at me. And so I was like, oh dear.
Well, you know, I guess, I mean, I don't know, but my thought on this is just that life is short and, you know, it's probably worth reaching out. Especially now that Rob's expressed it, and Julie, you're always searching for the truth.
Sure.
That, you know, that maybe there's another avenue. Yeah. But I do want to thank you, Rob, for agreeing to be on this podcast, and Julie for, you know, arranging the whole thing and letting me be the interviewer for once. This was really fun.
Yay!
Oh, thanks, Richard. And it's been great. 100 episodes, hey?
Hey, thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Really appreciate it.
All right, that is it for episode 100.
Oh, brother and sister, that was fun.
Yeah.
Julie, we did it. We made it through 100 episodes.
We did. And now we have decided that now that season 1 was 100 episodes.
It's a long season. It's never ending.
Crazy long.
No mini-series with us.
Yeah, really. Maxi series. So we've decided to end season 1, and we're not going to end the podcast, and start season 2. In the meantime, we're going to take a couple weeks off.
Yeah, I think we deserve it.
And but I don't know, I might post like a couple little Easter eggs, maybe.
Something fun, yes.
Yeah, but we're not going to do any actual episodes until the end of May.
Right, so we'll be back with you all. I believe the drop date will be May 31st for episode 101, which will be the first episode of our second season.
201. Season 2, episode 1.
There you go.
All right, tell the people about yourself.
I am Richard Castle, as you know. You can follow me on the Twitter at Castle Songs. If you want to find out anything about what I do in real life when I'm not on this podcast as a songwriter and a composer and musician, then you could go to my website, richardcastle.com.
I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. You can find me on the Twitter at Jules Jackson. With 2 O's, I almost said .com. Find the podcast at CutOff Jeans Pod. Join the Facebook group, CutOff Jeans Podcast. Send me an email, JulesJackson@cutoffjeans.com. And also subscribe, rate, and review.
Please do, or decide to become one of our patrons at Patreon, and we'd enjoy that too.
Yes, and guys, that is the end of season 1. And you know what the theme of season 1 is?
What?
The truth is in your jeans.